We're live.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the study session of the University City Council to order at 5:30. Before you, to my colleagues, you have the agenda for the regular meeting. At this time, does anyone have any changes to that agenda? Hearing none. Ms. Sharp.
Honorable Mayor Crowe, members of the City Council, tonight we have with us the project team for the Great Rivers Greenway Centennial Greenway project, which will extend from I-170 to Heman Park. And with that, I would ask that the team step up to give you all the presentation, and then they will probably have questions for the council, and then you can ask questions of them as well.
If you'll hit the button at the bottom, the green light will come on, and you'll probably have to stay relatively close to the microphone, just so you know.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you so much. My name is Gabby Danbeck. I'm a Civic Engagement Manager for Great Rivers Greenway. Along here with me, I have Mara Perry. She's the project manager for this project. Up on the screen here, I don't know if you guys want me to flip it. Okay. I can show you guys just a couple slides of what we've got going today. So I wanted first to show you guys our project team for this project. Like Brooke said, that this would go from Heman Park to I-170. So you have me and Mara, who are representing Great Rivers Greenway. We also have an engagement team that I am working with to help us with public involvement, getting community feedback. With Shockey Consulting, we have Lorna Curdy and Beth Quindry. We also have Confluence Inc. We are working with Andrew Holtzman, Hank Myers, and Chris Klein. And then also at Horner and Schifrin, we have some engineers, Raman, Jervis, and Brady as well. Next, I just have a few things to go over with you. We just have a very short presentation today, nothing too tasking for us to go over today, but basically we're going to give you a project understanding and a couple tasks, an overview of the project, and then we'll have some questions and time available for that as well. So if you flip to the next slide in your packet, you'll see an overview of who GRG is. I'm not so sure if everybody here knows who we are, but I always give a brief presentation about who we are as an agency. We are the regional multi-county public agency for parks, greenways, and trails in St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and St. Charles County. We are actively building over 20 greenways in our three-county region and currently have over 140 miles of planned, design, and built greenways so far. We also have over 250 successful working partnerships with agencies like you, nonprofits, organizations, municipalities, all kinds of people we work with. And then our whole goal here is to create a lasting legacy of greenways for people to enjoy. You can see in the tiny circle there in our region is where we're working on today. And then I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Oh, before I do that, I'm going to describe what a greenway is. Sorry, I got a little bit ahead of myself. A greenway is more than just a linear trail. It is more like a linear park. We are doing conservation. There's a lot that goes into creating a trail, from design to planning to engineering. We are also working with neighborhood connections. We want to make sure that people who are going to be using the greenway have input on what they are going to be seeing in their community. We also have trailheads, we have amenities, and we have the public give input on what that looks like. The last thing we have is a sustain team. They help with maintenance on the greenways when municipalities can't do it all themselves. They help with conservation projects. They help with programming the greenways, whether it be bird watching or slushies on in Heman Park or whatever it could be, anything like that. So it's more than just the bicycle and pedestrian trail that you see physically. It is a whole linear park space. So now we're going to zoom in a little bit. This is our whole Centennial Greenway segment that you can see within St. Louis County. And I'm going to pass it over to Mara to talk a little bit more about what that looks like.
So thank you. Centennial Greenway, for a lot of people, each of our greenways has a name, and those greenways are means of making connections to different areas. Our Centennial Greenway is intended to go from Forest Park all the way out to Creve Coeur Park, and actually to make your connection to St. Charles County. So at some point in time, once we make all of these connections, you will be able to bike from Forest Park all the way out to St. Charles County. We also have other greenways that'll take you from Forest Park all the way to the Arch Grounds is what we're working on now. So making all those connections, providing these amenities for these various communities. You can see here, anything that's solid green is already a built greenway. Everything that's in a dashed line is something that we are currently working on. And we highlighted in red this next section, this segment that we would like to work on with your community in partnership. So what we are looking at, for those that know it, we do have already within your community Ackert Walkway, which makes that connection from Forest Park and connects a little bit through in Washington University. From Ackert Walkway to Heman Park, we're currently partnering with St. Louis County on a project on Vernon. That particular project has matching federal funds to replace the roadway, as well as to put in a 10-foot wide shared use path. We were able to partner with them. So we put down 25%, county put down 25%, and the remaining 50% for that project is covered by federal funds. Then when you get to the other side, this is the project that we're asking to work on within your community. We're working on trying to find a connection from Heman Park all the way to 170, because at 170, we have an existing greenway that's already built that takes you all the way down into Clayton to Shaw Park. It also takes you up north and connects you under I-170 along Olive. And so making those connections are very important to us. Then just to let you know, some of the sections that continue further, the section just past that, that's Dealman to Olive. It took us 7 years of working with a railroad, but we finally have the ability to work and make that connection. It's in design to make the connection from Olive all the way up to Dealman. We just over the last summer did a ribbon cutting for the section that goes from Dealman all the way to Five Oaks at Warson within the city of Olivet. We then have funding and are in design for the next section that takes you up through one of the industrial park areas and onto Bauer. Bauer then takes you to US 67, which is Lindbergh Boulevard. That section, we have received federal funding to do design for a bridge to get bikes and pedestrians over Lindbergh, which is, one of those ones that's very difficult for people to cross. Once you get to that next section, after you get over Lindbergh, we are also partnering with St. Louis County and did the same sort of funding like Vernon on Schutz Road. That's going to take you all the way down to a larger Ameren corridor with the one last section that we are not currently working on, but we're getting close to. And then as you get further, we're working on some other connections that are going to get you all the way to Creve Coeur Park. The importance of all of these happening right now is that typically some of our projects can take 4 to 5 years from the point where we start in the early planning, working with the community, finding out what they want, finding out what the city wants to have or can sustain. And then by the time we get into construction, it can be 4 or 5 years down the road. So the fact that all of these sections are in the stage that they are is really important because it is something that could happen quite soon for this particular area and community. The process that we are suggesting to do with your community is that we would like to start meeting with stakeholders, talking with various stakeholder groups within the community about this particular location. About 10 years ago, 10 to 12 years ago, in about 2014, we did work with residents and the council within U City about this particular connection. At that time, the route that was being discussed was something that the residents were not very interested in. A resident came and reached out to us a few years later and had suggested that maybe there might be another route that he had bikes that we could look at. So we looked at that, we put it onto some of our maps, and we are wanting to revisit it again to see if maybe this would be a better route or a better connection. So our idea would be to, after we meet with stakeholders and start doing some analysis of the area, to potentially have an open house in March of this year. After that, we would go back to stakeholders, your various boards and commissions, meet with them to talk more about some of the ideas that have come out of those meetings. Then we would try to, with our consultant team, work out some alternate various routes that could potentially be used and get the feedback from the community, from the council, council, from your various boards and commissions, other stakeholders. And then we would have another open house to talk through those alternates, what's been found, and determine whether there might be a potential route. We then go to the point where we do a report so that we can kind of get a sense of, is this something we would present to the council that you want to move forward with? And if so, we would then move into design. When we get into the sections of moving into things like design, that would take us through 2026 into 2027. The earliest we would probably do some sort of construction would be 2028 or 2029. Do know that the section on Vernon with St. Louis County is supposed to start construction in like 2027. So thinking about all those connections and how you would make those things work. So we just felt that it was important to talk with you and just get a sense of whether this is something that we should continue to move forward with. The red dashed line is the study area we would be looking at. Do note that our team is very understanding that there is floodplain and floodway, and there's many things that we need to take into consideration. That is why we do have an engineering team that is familiar with regulations related to floodplain and floodway. We also would want to work with University City School District and other groups to make sure that we're taking everything into account. Again, you can kind of see on the map some of the connections that we're trying to make to existing greenways and potential future greenways. And we just wanted to make sure that as we came in to talk to you, that we would open it up to see if you had any questions about our process, any concerns about us moving forward with this process with the community, and just to say that we'd love to come and continue to work with the City of University City in making these kinds of connections, both for walking, biking, commuting, and for some getting to school. So any questions?
Are there questions from members of council for our colleagues from Great Rivers Greenway? Councilmember Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. When the initial project came through, I was in one of the subdivisions and remember all this discussion. When this is all said and done, who's responsible for the maintenance of this project as it? We previously attended the county's presentation where they're going to change Vernon over, and then the maintenance of the trail, and I wouldn't say policing necessarily, but just making sure that it's maintains a public way.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to take care of that afterwards? That's my question.
So when we work on these projects, we always start very early with talking with the cities about operations and maintenance. We typically turn over operations and maintenance once we have completed the construction of the greenway to the community or the entity that is responsible for that area. So if it's within a county right of way, if we end up having the route going down north and south, if I'm remembering that's county right of way, that would be something that we would have an operations and maintenance agreement with them for that section of what they would maintain. Anything else that's within the City of University City, we would have that conversation before we get into design in this early planning stage about what you can maintain, what you want to maintain, and how it could be maintained by the staff that you currently have within, whether it's your Parks Department or your Public Works Department. Yes.
Councilmember Clay.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe, and thank you for the presentation. I am not a cartographer, so I think I need some assistance with understanding where exactly this goes up Vernon. So is it Vernon? Does it go where transition to Balsam? Like how?
So the Vernon section, which is a completely separate process than this one, that Vernon section is going from where Ackert Walkway comes up right at the fire station. They're going to enhance the crossing across Vernon there. It's going to be on the north side of the street the entire way until it gets to Heman Park. When it gets to Heman Park, there is a section currently when you get just a little bit past the eastern edge of the park. There is currently a wider path that you can go on. They're going to make a connection into that wider path. And then the remainder of the sidewalk for the last section of Heman Park is going to be replaced in kind in the same location. But the remainder of the section going from the fire station all the way to the connection into Heman Park, that will all be a 10-foot wide shared use path that will have a little bit of a buffer between the roadway and the 10-foot wide shared use path. St. Louis County, we held a couple public meetings back in, Gabby, it's been a year now, hasn't it?
January of 5.
Okay, so January of 2025 is when January of 25? Gosh, that feels like a long time ago. We held meetings with the public and met with other groups with St. Louis County for that section. And they are currently starting into talking with various property owners about replacement of, like, if they're going past a driveway, how to replace the driveway, and making agreements for temporary construction easements if they are needed. But essentially they're trying to work within the existing right of way. So they are narrowing the actual roadway. It's not going to be 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. County is doing 1 lane of traffic in each direction and a center turn lane. They're also enhancing some of the pedestrian to make it safer to cross Vernon at some of the key intersections along that section.
Okay. And my next question was, we had and this may be outside of your province, but we had a process here with the Third Ward Task Force. There's some dollars coming from the markets at Olive, the Costco, and it's to be used in the Third Ward, which is Olive, basically Olive to Page. And out of that process, there were a lot of one of the things that emerged, a lot of people seem interested in the Third Ward, was walkability. It actually was a little surprising to me how high it was in the priority list. I don't know if you have seen that. I don't know if there could, I don't know, any collaboration or any work understanding some of the dynamics around Olive in particular, and making that more walkable in the work that you are doing. But I just offer that as maybe something that in your planning you could consider as we attempt to move forward with our Third Ward Task Force plan.
We are definitely aware of that area. And right now, because our greenway already goes up, we don't necessarily want to make any other like connections. We're trying to connect down to Heman Park. And so the question might be, would someone already take our existing greenway? But there are potential connections to connect to our greenway in other ways. So that can be definitely a part of the study and the conversation. We don't do just updated sidewalks. We really do our shared use paths. So at a minimum, we want it to be 10 to 12 feet, which doesn't always work. Can't be something that can be in every area of the community, but we try to see how we can make the proper connections on accessible sidewalks and connections to get into our greenway at some point to make that like sort of larger commuting area. But do know we're very aware of that. We have that on our list to get more information about that whole area of the redevelopment. And in talking with St. Louis County about other projects, they had told us also to be very aware because they've been hearing about making better pedestrian connections from Olive in that development.
A couple of things. I think the last time that when you were taking us back down memory lane, that probably had more of a challenge because I think at that time the route was going through some private neighborhoods, and now we're doing all public unless I am as I see that. And then the second thing I would ask is along Vernon, we have a number of residents who I believe either have more cars than they have driveways for, or simply we have folks who park on. So I'm assuming we're going to be asked the question, is parking going to be similar to what it currently is?
Yes. So in the design study, we did meet with representatives from your fire department, police department, public works, parks. I think also planning was at our meetings. There is on-street parking remaining, in particular in areas where people don't have or where depending on where their driveways are and other things like that. Many times we like to keep, if we're going to have on-street parking, we make sure the on-street parking is actually adjacent to the greenway, makes it safer for people walking. They don't have cars racing past them. They have parked cars next to them. So I do know that county specifically ensured that areas that had, that needed to have more parking, we're still going to have parking on the street.
And then is there one primary point of contact for the city to you, or are you having multiples?
So we typically use Gabby because she's our community engagement staff member to this particular project, goes through Gabby. But then I'm available for all kinds of questions and any concerns.
And then the flip side, Brooke, is there one main for us to them, or do we have a
Mayor,
proliferation of people?
so Morella is the primary contact, the Director of Public Works.
And then they'll be making outreach to the Parks Commission and the Traffic Commission, or that may have already occurred?
So they did present to the Parks Commission last week. And I think we did discuss the Traffic Commission, but we put them before Parks before they came to you,
Okay.
just in case Parks had any recommendations.
Thank you. Councilmember Smotherson.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Just a quick question on the panel just before, well, if you go back 2 panels and one more, I think, right here.
Yes.
You have project area, but then when you go ahead to the next panel, you've reduced that project area. So that's what I'm trying to understand. Are you eliminating Olive from this project? I mean, because again, you have it marked here,
Yeah.
but
So we're looking at the overall project area, the larger one, for when we're talking to the community of how can we make connections within the entire area? But we are trying to focus a little bit down because 12 years ago, there were some areas that were recommended by residents. So we're sort of using that as a starting point. We're also very particular. We do not have the ability to use eminent domain or condemn property. So when we look at where our greenways are going to go, we look at right of way that's wide enough for us to get a greenway in. We also look at utility corridors and we look at old paper streets. So for us, it's very important. So that's why it's narrowed down a little bit, because we're trying to focus on what streets can we potentially look at, but we're still looking at multiple routes within those areas. And that map is more for our consultant team to start figuring out what sections do they need to map out. And then when we would do a public meeting, we would talk about the much larger area. What should we be connecting to? Are we connecting to the high school? Are we connecting to Brittany Woods Middle School? What are the various private schools? What are the parks that you have? Where should these connections be made? And it might be that we expand back out or make changes.
Councilmember Brenner.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. I see lots of potential in there because Wilson, which is what goes along the river towards Heman, right? That's where we're buying property right now.
Yes.
And then also there's a path already behind the Green Center. So I guess you guys have already checked all those things out.
Those will be the initial like maps and drawings that we share with the community to ask feedback. So yes, we have already started looking at where is their existing right of way? What have you purchased so far? Many times you can work with getting paths through areas like that. Obviously taking into account what kind of permits you need with FEMA and things like that. But yes, we have already started
Seen that.
gathering that information.
And Groby is a wide enough road that you can see potential. Is that what that is?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Groby and Old Bonham
Mhm.
are wide enough that we do see the potential. And then many times, again, you can partner projects together. So if it happens to be something that you are needing to resurface or make improvements to, that many times you can partner with us and our funding can help you sort of get you over that edge on getting a section redone, repaired by adding our greenway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the body? Hearing none, we thank you very much for coming. Good luck.
Thank you so much. We do have some maps of our greenway if we want to.
Sure.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. We will stand adjourned until 6:30.